Hi, everybody. Hope everybody had a good lunch. You enjoyed the warm weather. My name's Debbie Feldman from Home Again Transitions in New York, and I have the pleasure of introducing Karen Dietz. Karen is a veteran in business storytelling and is one of the pioneers in this innovative and exciting field. In 2013, John Wiley Publishers recruited Karen for their Dummies series. Her book, Business Storytelling for Dummies, was published, quickly praised, and became a bestseller within a year. Karen opened up the San Diego, California 2013 TEDx conference with her narrative on the impact of storytelling to change lives and companies. With a BA in Communications, Karen received her master's and PhD from the University of Pennsylvania. In the business world for 20 years, she continued being trained in storytelling by top-ranked performance tellers. Karen is also the former executive director of the National Storytelling Network Association. Karen's clients include Disney, Princess Cruises, Citrix, Avery Dennison, Cedars-Sinai, Chase Bank, many nonprofits, and many entrepreneurs. Please welcome Karen Dietz to NASMM 2019.
Thank you. Oh, thank you. It's so great to be here. Now, I just turned my microphone on. Hopefully there won't be static from, it hits my my pearls, right? So let me know if, I need to make an adjustment. It's so great to be here. Thank you so much for attending. We're going to talk about stories and storytelling and how to use this wonderful method to grow your business. But before we get started, how many here are sole proprietors? They're owners or founders of their own company? Oh, that's a lot. Okay. And how many are part of a larger organization, right? Okay. So we've got a good mix of both. So everybody in this room is going to be able to use stories and storytelling to help you go to whatever next level of your business you would like. And what we're going to do today, well, we're going to learn why stories work and how to craft them well. Now, if you figure out why stories work, that's a great leg up on knowing how to craft a good story. So we'll talk about that, and then bottom line, I want you to be able to walk away knowing which stories you need to tell and how to apply those stories to your business. So, fair enough? All right. There is so much to share with you about storytelling that I could go on for a few months. And I've been doing this work in storytelling long before it was popular. And so I've got all this experience. So why I say that is because if you have a question, I want to make sure you have an opportunity to ask that question, and I'll do my best to answer that. But I'm here, so use me, right? and get whatever answers you have or questions you have, get them answered. All right, so why do we want to pay attention to storytelling in business? Basically, because of what Mike Bosworth found. Now, Mike Bosworth, he is a big, super-duper sales trainer, and is one of the top in his field. And a few years ago, he discovered, he did a little research, he said, do you know that only 13% of all salespeople are selling 87% of the business? That's an astounding figure. Only 13% of all salespeople are really being effective. And so the question is, well, what the heck are these 13% doing? So he discovered this. Those 13% were making an emotional connection with the people that they were with. It did not matter what sales process they used. They could be actually terrible salespeople, but if they were making that human connection, right, they would get results. And you too can be in that 13% because stories are one of the fastest methods to use to make that emotional connection with someone else. And when you learn to really work with stories consciously, deliberately, with intention, these are things you'll avoid. You won't be boring, right? You'll never be boring again. You won't be in the land of bland land, you know? Sort of talking and people experiencing you like everybody else, right? And you will be less confused about how to talk about you, your company, and your services. And it is the richest vehicle we have to create an immediate connection, build trust, believability. Okay, here. Neuroscientists have been studying storytelling. And I've always wanted them to take pictures of what was happening when a teller was telling a story and somebody else was listening to a story. And a few years they finally did. And this is what they discovered. When the teller was telling a story, all these different areas of their brain were lit up, at least 7+ areas of their brain. And they also then looked at the listener's brain and they saw, oh yeah, those exact same areas were lit up that were in the storyteller's brain. So storyteller and listener brain, they were all lit up in the same areas together. Now, how long did it take for the listener's brain and the storyteller's brain to mesh up, to connect? Anybody want to guess? 5 seconds. That's a good guess. Between 1 to 2 seconds. That's how immediate the connection is with somebody when you start sharing a story. That's more information. We're going to talk about that as we go on. So what makes stories work? All right. All you have to do is kick back and listen, right? Just have a good time. So there we are. It's in Paris. We're all in Paris. I'm in Paris. And there's it's one of those gorgeous spring days, one of those spring days where you can smell that new growth on the air, and at the same time you can feel still that chill of winter. It was on one of those spring days that there's a poet named Jacques, lived in Paris, and he says, oh my God, I've got to go on a walk today. It's so gorgeous, so beautiful. And so he does. And as he's walking down the streets of Paris, up ahead of him, he sees that there's this beggar sitting on the sidewalk. And the beggar is sitting next to a coffee and pastry shop. People are coming in and out of that shop, and a bell is above the door. And as the poet, as Jacques gets closer to the beggar, he sees that the beggar has a sign in front of him. And the sign says, blind, no pension, please give. Well, Jacques decides to check in with the beggar, see how he's doing. And the beggar goes, oh, he says, it's really terrible. I'm so discouraged. I'm actually quite afraid because no one is coming up and talking to me. No one is putting anything in my cup, and I'm not really sure how I'm going to make it. So Jacques looks at the sign and asks the beggar, well, can I change your sign? And the beggar goes, well, okay, but on the reverse side. So if I can turn it around, if I want to turn it around, I can. And so the next thing that blind beggar hears is the scratch of Jacques' pen on that piece of cardboard. And when Jacques is done, he sets the cardboard sign back down next to the beggar, bids him good day, and continues on his walk. Well, it was a few weeks later, another one of those gorgeous spring days, and Jacques takes another walk and does the same walk he did before, takes the same route. And sure enough, he sees the beggar sitting on the sidewalk up ahead of him, decides to check in, see how he's doing. And the beggar says, oh my gosh. He says, people are stopping and talking to me all of the time. They're putting coins in my cup. Sometimes I have to empty it 2-3 times a day. He says, I think I'm going to be okay. And Jacques was so pleased. He says, oh, I'm so happy for you, and bid him good day to continue on his walk. But the beggar says, wait, before you go, you've got to tell me, what did you write on my sign? And Jacques says, oh, that was easy. I simply wrote, spring is coming, but I will not see it. Spring is coming, but I will not see it. Okay, so let's talk about this story for a little bit. What makes it work? So I'm going to ask you a series of questions, and there are no right or wrong answers. Right? I just really want to know what happened for you. So first thing, how many people, and raise your hand, how many people, when I was telling the story, saw pictures in their mind? Okay, great. So what kind of pictures did you see? Right? Anybody?
The gentleman on the sidewalk.
You saw the sidewalk?
Sign.
The sign. You saw the sign. What else did people see? Grass. Yes? Cafe. Jacques. You saw Jacques. What does Jacques look like? He had a beret. But not everybody saw a beret, right? How else did Jacques look for other people? He what? He had a beard, right? He was clean cut. See, no beard, sorry. He was sitting down, right. Okay, did anybody see the beggar? Oh, what did the beggar look like? Kind of disheveled, scruffy. Right. Unkept. Okay, great. Now, did anybody smell anything? Okay, so what did you smell? Bread, coffee, the beggar. See, sometimes that happens. Not everybody smells the beggar, but sometimes it happens. Okay, and what else did you smell? The fresh air, that kind of new growth, that green growth. Okay, great. Now, did anybody hear anything? What did you hear?
The bell of the coffee shop.
Right. Now, not everybody heard the bell, but you heard the bell. How many people heard the bell? Right. A number of people heard the bell. What else did you hear? The writing on the cardboard. What did you hear? Oh, the clinking of the coins in the cup. Right. What else did you hear?
People coming and going, ignoring the beggar.
Oh, see? Right. Sometimes people say, oh, I heard the footsteps of people, walking down the sidewalk. Right? Anybody hear anything else? Birds. Right. Yes. All right. And did anybody feel anything, like on their skin or tactily?
The chill.
The chill. Sometimes people feel the chill of that air, but not everybody does, right? So most people don't feel that, but some people do. And then, what were maybe some emotions you felt? Compassion. What else?
Sadness for the beggar.
Yeah, a little sadness for the beggar. Hope. Right. Absolutely. So, when the poet changed that sign, right? What do you think he did for all of us? What was that shift that he made? Perspective. Empathy. That's exactly right. Because didn't the beggar have all the right information on his sign? Blind, no pension, please give. Right. But when when Jacques changed that message, right, he allowed us just for a moment to experience what life might be like for that beggar. So hence empathy, hence the compassion, hence the hope. So is all this making sense? Okay. Now, I know it's like, I'm going to take these off, see if that helps.
Karen, so I knew where this was going because I'd seen this video on Facebook. But what is interesting to me is that in Facebook, it is a story that is visual but not spoken. There are no words. And this was a story that was spoken but not visual. And although you would think what's visual is richer, it's also very non-involving compared to telling a story to an audience where you're looking at them. It's the same story, same heartstrings it plays in.
Yeah.
But as a speaker, you can be connecting with people with the story in a way you can't by showing
It's happening.
someone the story.
That's exactly right. So let me try this, and now I want to talk about another thing that was happening here in your experience. So what I'd like, I need help here. So I need somebody to time this next experience. Okay, you can do that. Glenn is going to do that. And then I need somebody else to spot when the majority of hands in this room go up in the air and to tell me when that happens. Okay, you'll do that back there? Great, because you can see everybody. So that's pretty cool. All right, and your name is? Susan. Great, thank you, Susan. Now, everybody else, your job is to be really, really honest with yourself. And when you notice that you stop listening to me, I want you to raise your hand. Okay, fair enough? All right, here we go. I just took this off of a website of a local moving company here in San Diego. I hope no one is here from that moving company. I don't think anybody is. You are timing how long it takes when I start reading, right? How long it takes for Susan to tell me to stop. And there's Susan back in the back of the room. Okay, now I've been doing this activity for 10 years. Let's see what happens with this group. Right? All right, so here we go. You're local movers in San Diego. People who currently live in San Diego look around to find the perfect home. Once you find that home, it's time to move. We can help you move all around the San Diego area, including the suburbs of Chula Vista, National City, or Escondido. If you hate moving, you'll really love our movers. Buying or selling a home? We work with local realtors, so you don't have to worry about getting a moving company when buying and selling a home in the San Diego area. You can start packing even before you know you will move. Items that you don't use, such as old yearbooks and other sentimental items, can be packed ahead of time. Make sure that you pack these items in sturdy boxes or even plastic totes, since you might not choose to unpack them when you get to your new home. Just label them so we know where you want them stored. As you pack up everything else, start with the items that you don't use often. This ensures that you have access to the things you need while you are in the process of moving. The last items that you pack should be the ones you will need right away when you move. Mark these boxes clearly with a star or a large exclamation. All right, stop.
1 minute and 14 seconds.
Okay, you guys lasted a long time. You were still listening, I know. Well, some people have a larger capacity to listen than others, and if you've been listening to a lot of information during the day, your ability to listen to something like this is shorter. But where you all rank, right, on all the groups I've been doing this with for the last 10 years, the average is 57 seconds. So you lasted 1:15, and you're up there with at least one other group, right? A group of engineers. Interestingly enough, I know it's funny, right? But I think if I had shared with you something that was different from, a different topic, maybe from an academic journal, we would have probably hit that 57 seconds. 10. Right. Okay, so how many pictures did you see in your mind? It's kind of iffy, maybe a few, right. Did you hear anything other than me talking? Did you smell anything? Did you feel anything? Right. Maybe a little bored. All right. If you were hanging out with one of your conference buddies this evening, or you were calling your family and checking in with them tonight, do you think in your own way you could tell the story of Jacques and the beggar? Okay, so the piece that I read from the moving company, could you repeat what I said? So which is more memorable? Which is more memorable, the story? And which can you repeat? The story. And which would you rather listen to, by the way? Right. What do we do as businesses? We give up this paper, right? Which is all about the process. Our wonderful process that we go through to help our clients, right? Nothing wrong with process. It's just with the emphasis, on which syllable do you put the emphasis, right? The other thing about stories that I want you to know is that I can't tell you how many times people have told me after I share the poet's story, the story of Jacques, that they not only saw, heard, felt, tasted things, but they actually became Jacques walking down that sidewalk. And that's pretty amazing. Not only were you listening to the story, you became part of the story, right? And even if you were hearing things, smelling things, visualizing things, that story was a part of you. Now, did I provide you many details? Did I describe the beggar? Did I describe Jacques? Did I describe Paris? So, what was happening? Who was filling in the details? From your own experience. Which is why some people saw a beret and some people saw a beard, and right? So you're filling the experience in from your own details. So do I have to convince you about being in Paris? No, you're just there. So that's the beauty of storytelling. Now, to go back to Margot's comment about the story and seeing it on Facebook. This is actually a true story. And the poet is Jacques Prévert. And he had this experience, and he told it to a friend of mine, another folklorist, storytelling colleague up in San Francisco State University, I believe it is. And she told it to me at one point. I heard it, and I asked her if I could tell it. And I've been telling it since about 2001. Now, stories travel. I don't claim any impact on this, except I've just been telling the story. And now you will find that story in Spanish, in German, and in English, and they're all slightly different. And I like the Spanish version the best, because I think it's the closest to the true story. Right? But I just wanted to tell you, you can go scope out this story, and there are videos out there, but that's just a little history for you about where it came from. It's not something I made up or something I saw, right? It's an actual true story. So, to recap really quickly, what makes stories work? We see images, we smell, touch, taste, feel, anticipate. It's a whole brain, whole body experience. There's no richer form of communication than stories because of that. And what was happening when I was reading that information from the moving company, actually only about 2 areas of your brain were activated, and those are the 2 language areas of the brain. Very narrow. Now, another thing that neuroscientists have told us about when we access those language areas of the brain is that the brain works really hard to try to remember it, and never really does. It gets tired a lot faster. But even more, we turn skeptical because we're trying to process the information, and we're thinking to ourselves, okay, I got to understand it. Do I believe it? Is it trustworthy information? And how can I debate it? So if you provide information, just only information about your business, you're activating areas of the brain that are working against you. Does that make sense? All right, so another reason to just keep using stories. Because, by the way, no one ever marched on Washington because of charts and graphs and bullet points. So what does this mean for you? Well, okay, story connects. We talked about that. Immediate connection, 1 to 2 seconds. Stories, when you share a story, it sparks a story in someone else. Or someone tells a story to you, and it sparks a story in you. I know you have had these experiences because you're hanging out with your friends, and somebody says, oh, yeah, one time blah, blah, blah happened to me. And you go, oh, gosh, I had a similar experience. This is what happened to me. Or you go, wow, that's interesting. I had a completely different experience, and here's what happened to me. Right? So you're swapping stories back and forth. And one of the things that I always have to remind businesses about is that when you are storytelling or story listening, if you're particularly storytelling, you have to allow the space for the person who's in front of you to tell a story in return. And this is how you really find out what's going on with them, right? So it's kind of like a no-brainer. But sometimes we forget. We get so excited about telling people what we're doing, right? And what the opportunity is. Stories also travel. What I mean by that is, I had a gal in one of my workshops. She and her husband owned a big car dealership in Orange County, just north of here. And she told me how she and her husband got that business, right? How they purchased it, how it came to be in their lives. And I said, wow, that's a great story. So I gave her the advice, next time you're at a networking event, when somebody comes up to you and says, hi, how are you doing? Gina, what's your business, right? Instead of saying, I own a car dealership, say something like this. Oh, yeah, I own a car dealership. Let me tell you how my husband and I actually got that business. And just launch into the story. And see what happens. Because, well, one thing I know is that an immediate connection will be made, right? And you've just told somebody about your business that they might not ask about. But here's what happened. So she went to a networking event a few days later. And she met somebody who said, oh, yeah, what do you do? And she said, oh, I own a car dealership. My husband and I do. Let me tell you about how that came to be. And she told that whole story. It's a short story, but a powerful one. And when they were done, the woman was going, oh, my God. She almost had tears in her eyes. And the gal in the workshop, her name was Jen, Jen said, well, you know, I was just experimenting. I was trying out something that somebody told me I should do. And they told me I should just tell that story when I met somebody at a networking event. And the gal, Mary, said, oh my God, you have to always tell that story. Just, it's so powerful, just always tell that story. So, okay, Jen had a good experience, woohoo. But they were in a round of tables for lunch. 10 people at a table. And Jen was sitting here, and Mary was sitting over on the other side. And Jen just happened to hear Mary turn to the person she was sitting next to and tell Jen's story. Now that is word of mouth marketing, folks. You cannot buy that. So all of a sudden, somebody that Jan never knew, didn't know, all of a sudden somebody knows about Jen. Okay, so stories travel, and then stories are little mini simulations. You know how we can test drive a car? Well, how many of your clients can test drive your move? A little bit, but it's kind of hard. So by sharing stories with them about what other people's experiences with you, they get to do a test drive of what you offer and how you deliver your services. So this leads to the question, okay, great, I'm sold on stories. I know a little bit more about it, right? I know I need to, feed people images and trigger those little things about the senses, smelling, hearing, like I did in the poet story with you. But what are the essential stories you need to tell about your business? Well, there are 7 of them, 7 signature stories. Now, in truth, we're surrounded by thousands of stories, but you got to get started somewhere. And so these are the 7 signature stories that every business or every person in business needs to tell about their company or themselves. So the first one is the origin story, how you got started. I've yet to run across somebody who owns a business who would just, laying in bed one morning, having a great time, just enjoying themselves and saying, oh, I feel so good, I'm going to start a business. It just does not happen like that, right? Something happened. Something was going on in your life. You had an aha moment, and you knew, oh my gosh, you are the perfect person to step in and solve this problem because you had X answer. And your answer might be different than everybody else's answer. Now, this is a really important story to tell because everybody wants to know how you got started and why. Now, when you can tell your origin story, first of all, it's your story. You own it. Your competitors can't tell that story. It's not their story. So your origin story distinguishes you from everybody else in the marketplace. And it is a client attractor. People want to know this story because they want to know what makes you tick. It builds trust. Another kind of story. Now these are numbered for reference, but not in order, right? Because they can happen however, right? It's a set of stories. Okay, people and results stories. These are stories about your clients or your vendors or your staff. Now you can tell these stories till the cows come home. But here's the biggest mistake companies make and entrepreneurs make when they're talking about their clients. This is how it often goes. Right? Oh, we met this client. They had this problem. We solved their problem for them. Woohoo! Aren't we great? Right? So the company is the hero of the story. Now, how many woohoo, aren't we great stories can you tell? Before people out there in the marketplace start thinking maybe you're what? Maybe a bit arrogant. But when you can tell the story about how this client contacted us, they have this problem, we had a solution for them, so we helped them do that. And here are the results that they got. Okay? Now, this is where most companies stop. This is the results they got. And I'm saying, story's not done yet. There's an additional piece. And that additional piece is, these were the amazing things they were able to accomplish because we helped them. So it's not about you. It's how you help them. But the story is really all about your client. You help them solve a problem. These are the results they experienced. And because of that, they were able to achieve something amazing in their lives. So does that make sense? Right. Now, you can tell that about your clients. Perfect for website. Perfect for promotional materials. You can also tell about your staff. If you have staff, what a great way to brag on your staff, right? Let me tell you about Joe. Oh my God, this is how he saved a day. And this is the amazing thing that the client was able to do because he did that. So, staff, and then vendors. How many people work with vendors? Okay, great. How many people are picky about their vendors? Why? Right, and you want to feel great about the people that you work with. Well, imagine being able to tell stories to your prospects about the vendors that you work with, but the amazing things that they're able to do because you work together. Or because, isn't this an amazing company, what they do on their own? And I'm so lucky to partner with them. And good news, they can serve you too. So those kinds of stories you can tell, you will never run out of those stories. As I said, you can tell those till the cows come home. Values and action stories. Now, we all have values in our business. We all have values that we operate by. Now, it's harder to tell a story about, oh yeah, I have a value of quality, right? So here's a little experience or a little story about how I do that. That's a little, a little dicey. But what happens when you catch somebody else living that value of quality? A vendor, staff person, somebody that you interact with around your business. Isn't it great to be able to tell that story? And then that conveys, oh, this is how we walk our talk. And then there are product and service stories. How many of you've been in business for a little while and you developed some new product or service because you saw the need out there in the marketplace? A few, right? These are the backstories of how that product or service came to be. Right? You had a bright idea, you saw the problem in the marketplace, you stepped in and solved that. We like these stories. I mean, how many people go on behind-the-scenes tours of companies? Right? Doesn't that fun? Right. So this is a way that you can tell a story, a backstory about a product or service and why it came to be. And the reason people love that story is because they want to see behind the fold. Right? They know you're talking to them about, all of the upfront stuff that you do. But this is a little sneak preview, right? Sneak peek at what goes on behind the scenes. All right, lessons learned stories. Now, you pick and choose when to tell these stories. You don't lead with these stories. But there will come a time when you're going to need to tell the story about, oh yeah, early on in my business, I made this mistake. And I swear I'll never do that again. And how we never make that mistake today is we do X. Now, what do you think the value is of telling that story? Why is that helpful?
Learn from your mistakes.
You learn from your mistakes.
I think it creates a sense of authenticity or credibility because you're sharing the truth.
Right, right. So it's another level of connection, human to human, that happens between you and your clients. Why else? Is it vulnerability? Right, absolutely. So these are important, can be important stories to tell at the right time, at the right moment. Right? You get to pick and choose. You know, you will know when you need to tell that story. And then the why I story. You know, I've been chief cook and bottle washer of my business for a long time. And there are days when I just want to stay in bed with the covers over my head. But I don't. I get up out of bed. And you know, we all do. Through the thick and thin times, through those times that are really rough, we keep going. Well, why? What keeps you going? For me, it's when I see somebody's been working on their stories and they feel really good about it, and all of a sudden, you know, just sticks out, standing up straighter. There's a light in their eyes, and the confidence that they have is just like, oh, so amazing and fabulous to see. You know, I'll get up out of bed every day to experience that. What keeps you going? Now, why is that story important? Why do you think you need to tell that one? It's one of the most neglected, by the way. Huh?
Remind yourself.
Yes. Yes. You know, to inspire others, you have to keep yourself inspired. Why else is that story important? Yes.
Can you give an example? I'm not so sure.
So people want to know how I came to this business, of business storytelling, and they want to know why. Right? So I could have this brilliant idea, the origin story, say, oh yeah, this is what I'm gonna do, all charged up, fired up, I'm gonna make a difference in the world and in the marketplace, yay. But, you know, there are times it's been hard. You know, times when it's not been easy, but I tell you why I keep doing the work I do. It's because when I work, let's say I work with former foster youth. They have big stories. They have stories that are hard to listen to because they're so painful. The horrible things that have happened to them. I mean, imagine going into the foster care system when you're 4 and living in 21 different households by the time you're 18. And so they don't know how to tell their stories. They don't have a voice. But they want to be able to tell their stories because they want to advocate for foster youth and changes in the system. They want to help the organizations that help them. And so they want to be able to tell their stories, and they don't know how. So when I'm able to help them tell their story in a way that makes them feel proud and makes the audience root for them, right? It's like there's no better feeling on the planet. That's why I do the work that I do. And the same exact experience happens when I work with businesses. So, how would you rate me on being dependable? High. Because you know, no matter what, I'm going to be there. And your clients want to know that they can depend on you. You're not just some fly-by-night organization. You're there through thick and thin. Whatever they're going through, you'll be there for them. Because you've just told them why. It can be an extraordinarily powerful story to tell that we don't often tell. And I just want to encourage you to tell that story and see what happens in your business when you start telling that story. And then your vision story. This is how the future is different, because me and my clients work together to make a difference in their lives, right? That's the hardest one to do. It takes like a whole nother workshop, right? Because you're thinking, well, what is that difference I want to make, right? And then how to tell that story. But I put it up there because it's one of the 7 that can be really, really impactful. So are these 7 signature stories making sense to you? You kind of tracking with this? All right. Now, what are the 3 that you need to tell to really grow your business? I mean, all 7 are great. But if you really want to boost your business, what are the core 3 that will make the most difference? So the first one is your origin story. The second one are all your people and results stories. The more, the merrier. And another one is your why I. This is why I'm here. This is why I'm staying here. This is what motivates me. This is what inspires me about my clients, about my work. I will be with you through thick and thin.
I think it's interesting that your why I story is shown with a woman holding a tree with money. Because we're all in business to earn a living.
Right.
But the money isn't always the why.
You know, you're pointing to something that I forgot to mention earlier, so I'm glad you're bringing this up. What your name is? Erin, right. So when businesses first start out with storytelling, it's sort of like this idea, let me tell you a story, you'll buy my product. Let me tell you a story, you'll sign up for my service. That's very transactional, right? But we know how business happens, it's through relationships. So you want to quickly move away from the transactional storytelling and focus on storytelling as being your vehicle for relationships. And creating relationships and sustaining those relationships over time. And so, I forget the original statement that got me on that track, but
I said that we're all in business
Right.
to earn a living, but my why isn't always about the money.
that's exactly right.
And if you can define your why and make a living doing it, then that's like the ultimate goal.
Yes, defining your why is the ultimate goal.
Making money off your why.
Well, if you're solid in your why, you attract the people to you and your business grows. So that's the basic principle, and that's relationship marketing. Cool. So let's do it. Let's do it. So I want you to take out a piece of paper or something to write with, whatever you've got that you're taking notes on. And I want you to pick one of these 3 stories. Right? Perhaps the easiest would be people and results stories because you've got clients, you've known what happens to them, you've experienced that, right? Maybe it's the origin story about how you got started. Maybe that's the one that's knocking on your door. So, no, I want to work on you. Tell me that one. And then the why I story, maybe you're inspired to kind of play around with that one and figure that one out. So just pick one. Okay? Just pick one. And I want you to write down the name. Doesn't matter what it is, you know. Yeah, write down a name for the story. Sam's story, or Joe's story, or, you know, the Sacramento story. It's just name it, right? Just so you have a reference for it. Now we're going to craft the story, and there is a structure for a story. I mean, there are 100 ways to tell a story, but I'm going to give you a simple starting structure. Now, here's the thing. I always start out with the key message. People go, what? Key message is the final thought you want to leave somebody with. We reverse engineer the story. That's a storytelling hack because it's the shortest way and the fastest way to create a story. If you can figure out the end of the story, what you want to say at the very end, then it's so much easier to pick and choose what goes into the middle of the story. How many people have listened to people share their story and they just go on and on and on. And you feel like you're being held hostage. So there are two things that are going on there. First of all, they haven't figured out the end of the story yet. They don't know what they want to say about that experience. And so as a result, they don't know what details to include or leave out, and so they include everything. So if you can figure out the final thought you want to leave someone with, what's that end of the story? What insight did that story give you? What lesson did you learn from that story? What does that story mean to you ultimately? What do you want to say about that story or about the human condition? What does that say about, what do you want it to say about your business? Anyway, play with that. So let's take a few minutes, and I want you to ponder that. I want you to write down some thoughts. What is that key message? When I talk about starting my business with $36 in my bank account, and I didn't know where my next meal was coming from, the end of that story is, if I can do it, you can do it. And it really was just about being persistent. When I talk about how I got into graduate school, the end of that story is never, ever take no for a final answer. So you see, right? Give you little examples. So take a minute, and let's get that key message down first. And you don't have to be married to this key message. It can change later on, but let's just get something down for now. And by the way, the key message is never, and so, you know, let's get you signed up. The key message that you deliver makes someone say to you, okay, sign me up. Right? So, what's that final thought? Everybody feel like they're getting their key message? All right, so the next part is, hey, what's the setting? Where were you? When were you? Who were you? Right? So there's four, you know, how you spot a story. There are four elements to a story. First one is the setting. And it's usually, oh, there I was. In Kentucky, right? So it's a place, geography. Or, you know, it was 1999. I was sitting in JFK Airport. That was the year, right? Or it could be where I was. Part of that was, you know, JFK Airport. But if I just want to focus on where, it was like, so there I was, sitting at my desk one day, working so hard. I create a little environment, right? I'm at the desk. So every story starts with a setting. Then there's another quality of stories. Every story has to have characters, people, and give them a name. No nameless, faceless people. There's actually been research done on this. And they discovered that people, you and I, don't relate very well to this person over there, or the poet over there, or the beggar on the street, right? No, we want to know about Sue, Jose, Ramon. So characters. If you're working with a team, you say, my team. No, it was Susan and John. Name, sprinkle a name or two. So then the other thing that a story has to have is action steps. Right? Something happens. We take action. And then the last thing that it has to have is a resolution and a key message. So that's how you spot a story. Yes? Oh, I skipped a problem. Right. Every story has a problem. No problem, no story. And your key message is your point. No point, no story. So continue filling out these pieces. What was the problem? What was the challenge? What was the trouble somebody found themselves in? Or that you found yourself in? And you can just do an outline. If we wrote down the whole story, we'd probably be here for an hour. But do what you can to fill in the blanks here. So then you took action. You took steps to resolve that problem. You did stuff. Stuff happened. Now, results and resolution, those can, go in any order. Today I like resolution first, which is, okay, this is how the problem got resolved. And because it got resolved, here are the results. So flip those. So that's the way it was, and that's my story, and I'm sticking to it. So take some minutes. We're going to give you another 5 more minutes to flesh out this story, and I'll check in with you and see how you're doing. All right, so wrap that up, bring it to a close. How many people got their outline at least all the way to the end? Woohoo! Right. Well, at least you know where it's going, right? How many people were able to get to that key message that they really liked? Everybody get a key message? Now, sometimes that's a work in progress, right? But I guarantee you, if you can focus on that key message first and figure out where you want to end up, it'll make figuring out the pieces that are going to get you there a lot easier. How many people were able to create maybe a second story because you just whipped out the first story so fast? Yeah, cool. I love that. Now, there are, ways to work with the story. You can write it out, right, on a piece of paper, on your computer, the full story. My tip is to write how you speak. Because there's a little thing that happens when we move the story from the written form to the oral form. And there's a translation process that happens. And we want our stories to be conversational, just like we're hanging out with our buddies, swapping stories, right? And in business, we are so well trained in jargon, in concepts, right? But what you want is to convey that experience. So Let's do a little reality check here. I woke up one morning. I was really hungry. Went to the refrigerator, no food. So I grab my wallet, go up to the grocery store, buy some eggs and some bread, come back home, and I make breakfast. Yum. All right, raise your hand if you would buy that book. Raise your hand if you would go see that movie. Boring. I can't tell you. Okay, I'm going to say 90% of my clients start out that way. When I say, tell me the story about what happened, they said, well, first this happened, and then that 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 happened, and then it ended. So what's going on there? When we say something like that, what are we doing? What are we sharing? Huh? Yeah, just the facts, ma'am. Right? We're sharing what we call just a series of events. Right? But we're not really sharing a story, are we? It's the bullet points, right? Otherwise, it gets so good. They're so well trained in. Right? But that's not sharing a story. When you are sharing a story, you are actually remembering. And you put yourself back in that memory. And if you can share the memory of what happened, then you are telling a story. Because my executives, they always ask me, okay, I don't want to do that like series of events thing, right? That's boring. I don't want to do that. So what do? And I say, remember the experience. Drop back into that experience. Share the experience. So instead of, I woke up one morning, I was hungry, went to the refrigerator, there was no food. It's, oh gosh, there I was. I woke up one morning, I was ravenous. And so I run to the refrigerator to see what I could make for breakfast. You know what? No food. I'm kind of going, oh my God, what am I going to do? I've got an appointment. I got to rush out of here, right? And so I grab my purse, hightail it up to the grocery store. Grab my bread, grab my eggs. Get to the checkout line. By the way, it was a mile long. I'm going, wait, I got to get home, got to make breakfast. Right? Got to get to work. So you can see that's more of an experience, right? So I just say that because as you are working on your stories, remember that. Remember the experience piece and not the, oh, this happened and then that happened and then that happened. All right. We've got 10 minutes where we can, hear some of these stories. I'd love to hear some of these stories. So who feels, now, this is your opportunity, right? To really, leap forward. So this is your opportunity to share a story. And this is how I work when I listen to somebody's story, is I just listen. And then one of my principles, how I work, is that I'll ask you at the end of the story what you liked about it. What worked? Because I want more of that. So I do not criticize. I do not give critical feedback. We just focus on all the things that were great about that story. And what I've noticed over the 20 plus years that I've been doing this, I'm kind of telling on myself now, but what I notice is that when I do that, the person who's telling me the story has already figured out what they want to fix. Storytelling is a creative act. If I go in and say, well, it would have been better if you'd have said it this way, what have I just done? I killed it. Right? Where's creativity going to go? right? But I've done something even worse. I have made your story mine. I have robbed you of your power over that story because I said, don't do that, do this. Follow me, right? Do what I tell you to do. And then when you're telling the story and I'm not there, what's going to happen? You're not going to know what to do. So this is how I do it. I say, God, I love that story. Here are the things that I really liked about everything that went on with that story. And so I'll tell you all of that. And then I'll say, well, there are a couple suggestions. Would you like to hear them? And then I say, okay, and you'll say yes or no. And I've been in situations, and it's perfectly okay to say no. Because I'm still working on my story. I'm not ready for suggestions yet. Still working out some things. Right? So you get to say yes or no. And if you say yes, I'll say, okay, well, when you got to this part, I've heard one person tell it this way. I've heard somebody else tell it a different way. I've heard somebody else say it a different way. 3 ways. Which one would you like to try on? And what sometimes happens, they get even a better idea beyond the 3 that I gave them. So you own the story still. And you're teaching yourself how to tell a great story. So I tell you that because I'm going to ask you for a story, and I want you to know how I'm going to relate to you and how I'm going to work with you. So given that, right, who has a story they want to try out? Oh, good. I'm glad we got someone. Okay, so let's do it the back of the room first and slowly make our way up. So I know Susan had one, and okay, Natalia. So since we haven't heard from you yet at all today, right, why don't you share your story? So can you come on up here? Sure. And I'm going to hold the microphone by you so we can record you and hear what you say. All right?
So my story is that it was an afternoon when I came from work. I used to work in a hospital because my background is medical. And I came home, my husband and I always sat on the porch and talked about how was your day. So he comes home, he used to be in the moving industry, big manager in logistics. And he said, I'm quitting my job. And I'm like, we were just a year married. And I say, okay, so what happened? He said, well, I went to this house and my company got after me because I was unpacking the boxes and helping connect the electronics and setting up the bed. And I'm just gonna quit. I'm not going back to work tomorrow. This is not how I am. I like to help people, and this is how I feel, and I'm just not gonna work. Are you okay with that? And I'm like, yes, let's do it. Let's start our business for helping seniors. And so he quit his job, and I continued to work in the hospital, which I say, now I'm stuck in the hospital forever. So it didn't happen that way. He started getting dollies and everything out of our garage. We started our first, in 1996, in the summer of 1996, we started our first senior moving company. And then after that, we continue, and I started working, instead of 5 days, I started working 4 days, and then went to 3 days, 2, and finally I quit my job because I couldn't do it anymore, both the moving and also working in the hospital. My husband passed away 5 years ago from cancer. Before he passed away, he said to me, do not forget seniors, keep going, keep doing the business. And so my story is that we started with just doing the moving, the packing, and the unpacking. Today we do the moving, the packing, the moving, the unpacking. We do consignment, we have a store, and so our business have grown immensely. And so my story is do not give up. There's always hope, and it's not easy. You always have to struggle in some ways, but it's good to there's always a sunshine and a rainbow.
What a what a great story. Okay, wait, we're not done with you yet. Come back up. All right, so I'm going to turn your name around so we can see it. Okay, Migdalia, that's a beautiful name. All right, so tell me, what did you like about that story?
Well, the fact that he asked me, we have to trust in God, and we have to start small, and we eventually going to grow, and we just have to take a chance. And so for me, that was taking a chance and trusting my husband, and trusting that we're going to get somewhere someday.
Oh, I love that. Okay, great. And you kind of asked that question, like, what did you learn from that? You know, what does it mean for you? But is there anything else you want to say about how important that story is for you?
Well, it's important because it's our legacy. It's, what we did since 23 years ago. So, I mean, I would always tell that story, even when I go talk to people in the senior communities. I don't leave it out. This is how we started, and this is how we always, I would always tell it.
That's really great. And what do you think they get out of the story? How does it make them feel, and what did they get from you hearing that story from you?
Well, when you go see a senior, I see them in different emotional stages. Sometimes I see a senior crying and they don't know where to start. And I tell them, I've been there. I've been in a place where I didn't know what to do. And I just, there's always solutions. So you just have to take it one step at a time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's really great. So this is an origin story that she's telling, right? And how does it make you feel? Like if you were sitting, we were sitting here listening to the story, but you're in your own role, right? But put yourself in a customer's role, right? And how would you feel about that story? And how would you respond? What's that? It humanizes her business. What else?
Well, when you said your husband actually quit so he could do the right thing for the client, that's huge.
Right.
And he thought he had a vision, that there's something more than following a corporate policy to help the client. And that tells me that you guys have compassion. You took a risk, and God bless you.
So, yeah, you took a risk, you have compassion, and that there's something more important, that happens for you with clients. You're really taking care of the clients rather than just, doing a time clock thing. Yeah, Lisa, you want to say something?
Well, I just heard when you first started, you said you were newly married, but I think we can all remember that. That was a lot of things to happen right away. I was waiting for the story to go, boom, this is coming. But you really had this trust that developed over your whole early marriage, marriage of life, and then even with your husband passing on, but that people would trust you because you put so much of your trust and your faith and actually devotion and energy into building this business. And you're still doing it. So to me, that's like win-win.
Right. So to paraphrase you, Lisa, so that we can hear it on the recording, right? Yeah, I know. Me too. But is the trust that was conveyed, you trusted, right? And because you trusted, now it feels safer for customers to trust you. Does that make sense?
You made it like.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like I say, when you walk through that door, the emotions that you deal with the seniors, with the problems, like I had a customer that just sold his house, and his wife was in a state that she was in a very critical state of dying. And he said to me, I don't know where to start. And he was crying. Every 5 minutes he would cry. So you just have to sit. I say, let's sit down, let's talk, hold their hand. And, and it was fine after everything, because you just got to take them one step at a time with them.
And I think you all have had experiences like that. And those are all experiences you can share. These are part of your stories that make your business alive, right? And, do you want a suggestion about your story?
Yes.
Yes, okay. So this story, right out of the starting gate, right? So this isn't a practice story. It's a story in process, right? It's being worked on. And so what I love about your story, well, first of all, God, you were so present. You really were. And you were just really sharing from your heart what happened. I love that you had, you knew where you were going. You kind of figured out your key message, right? And you did share, just like that, I would say, about all the right details that we needed to hear, right? So all of that's really good. Now, the only thing that I would suggest you kind of think a little bit more about is getting that key message down to a real succinct, piece. Now, it's not going to, of course, it's not going to happen like right here, right? Because you were crafting your story and then you came up, right? So sometimes these key messages take a few minutes or an hour or a day, to really solidify. And so if there's one thing that I encourage you to do is to really hone that key message so you can tell it and drop it, right? Like a story ninja.
Like tell seniors that even though it's like I went through a lot in my life, and I've gone through experiences of grieving, depression, and I was able to get out of it or be able to come out of it. And they're in their situation when they're trying to move, that they feel overwhelmed, and they will come out of it as well.
Perfect. You did it. Right then and there. Right. I love how that works. All right. Yay. Give a hand. Thank you so much. That's really great. Okay. So, we're going to need, I want to leave some time for Q&A. I want to hear all your stories, right? But we can't do that in the time we have left. But good news, we have an hour workshop right after here in the same room. And I'm going to, it's all very active. I'm going to teach you how to grow a story with somebody else so that you are equipped to always know how to craft and tell your story in a way that's really impactful. And so that's a hands-on activity. We're going to spend an hour doing that. I will teach you that whole process, and then you're going to do it. All right? So anybody who wants to tell their story is going to have the opportunity to tell their story. So stick around. Now, in the time we have left, we've got about 10 minutes. Is that about right? Okay, we've got 10 minutes. So let's open it up to some questions and answers. Yeah, and let me put my microphone back on. There. Okay, so you were the first.
So my question is, I love the idea for the stories, but how do you, launch into the story?
Okay.
Just picturing being at a networking event and trying to get into my story.
Yeah, that's a good question. How do you start a story? How you're out there in the world, and how do you launch into the story? There's some easy ways, right? Some stock phrases that will get you started, right? And launched into the story. So there I was. Right? So there I was. Oh, I need the microphone. Move it up. All right, is that better? Okay, so how do you open up a story? So there I was. That's one way. Another way is, God, you would not believe what happened to me the other day. Or, I had a client just like you. In a good way, right? Or, I know exactly what you mean. A few years ago, I was here, I was there, right? You see, so I've already launched into the story. Okay? So does that help? And you'll come up with more ideas. The thing, here's the best teacher for this, is to listen to others tell stories and listen to how they start. Story awareness is one of the biggest ways to build your storytelling skills. What kinds of stories are people telling? How are they telling those stories? How are they opening the stories? How are they closing the stories? What's working? What's not working? Yes?
If you can find a way to craft your key message so that it's almost as user way to say, what do you mean by that?
Yes, now we're getting into pretty sophisticated storytelling, right? But we can do that, right? You can do that. Now, there's a difference between a key message and how to lead into the story so that you can get to your key message. So here's what you don't want to do. Let me tell you about the time I learned that love hurt. Right? Or let me tell you about the time when I learned that I have split second reflexes and how it saved my life. What am I doing when I do that? Right, that's like reading a murder mystery and the first sentences are the butler did it. Right? So we telegraph what we're going to say. So, there's that old training model of tell them what you're going to tell them, then tell them, and then tell them what you just told them. Okay, please erase that from your brain. So, yes, you can say, so I told you what not to say. So here's what you can say. Let me tell you about the time I hit a deer. So I was driving down the highway. It was 10:30 at night. Had my friend Linda in the car. It was October. Okay, so you see, I'm starting the story. I've told you the story, it's about when I hit a deer, but I haven't told you the key message at all. So does that help? Okay, question.
How long should your story be? 3 minutes?
I love that question. I love that question. It's as long as the story needs to be. Now, that's kind of a glib answer, so let me define that for you. Well, first of all, we've been told that all of us have the attention spans of a goldfish. And let me tell you, that is not true, particularly when it comes to stories. When you engage somebody in a story, they are with you, and they will hang out there with you for as long as the story's great. The New York Times is engaged in long-form storytelling. They did it as an experiment first, and now they just do it all the time. Now what they realized is that they could write these long, complex stories that totally hooked people, and people read the entire thing all the way through. And then there's times when you're in the elevator, and somebody says, "Tell me the story about your company." So there is a 1-minute story. 1-minute story is problem, action, resolution. So you can stories are elastic, and you can expand them and contract them like a rubber band. So when you have the opportunity to tell the story, it can be 10 minutes long. I have a storyteller friend, coach, teacher, mentor, who has a story called The Story of Hope, and it is 2.5 hours long. And he never loses a soul. That's our capacity to listen to stories. Information, not so much, right? 1 minute, 15 seconds. So the thing is to tell the story, and you have to, we're all we're aware of, when we're talking to people, what their attention spans are, right? And you'll know how to shorten the story, how to lengthen the story. But don't get stuck in this notion that it has to be short because people can't listen to it. They will listen to it. They love to listen to it. We are hungry for stories. Okay, that's my soapbox. Thank you. Okay.
This may be kind of related. I'm thinking about how this process translates into developing, your marketing collateral that's written.
Oh, yeah.
Website,
No, thank you for that prompt. I was like, I forgot my slides. Okay, right. So you can expand them during conversations and presentations and articles and blog posts, and you can shorten them up on your website, in marketing materials, on social media, and again, sometimes in articles and blog posts. So again, they expand and contract, right? Got 1 minute to go. Practice your story. That's what we're going to do. Next breakout session. Stay tuned. What do you need to do next? Find another story. Craft it. Tell it. Practice it. Apply it to your business. So, what are your next steps? Listen for the stories that surround you. You are swimming in a sea of stories, and most of us are unconscious. But if we can become conscious about them and aware about them, all of a sudden we get trained in great storytelling. Identify the customer and staff or vendor stories that you can tell, and then get together, right? With a colleague, someone here, your family, trusted partner.
Does that mean like asking permission to tell it if they're involved in it? Is that what you meant? Like number two?
Number two, no, I just want you to listen. Now, you will need to ask them permission at some point. But now, just listen for those stories, because so often we go and, oh, what story do I have to tell, right? So listen for stories, and you'll figure that out pretty fast. And then brainstorm how you want to use them with a colleague. Takeaways, I hope you got some great ones, right? Come share with me, right? Or else I'd ask you now, but we got to go. And then here's how to reach me. Business Storytelling for Dummies, buy it on Amazon. Then there's a curation of free articles on how to tell stories. There's the link. And you can download this presentation and have it available to you. And the link will be there. And then my email, my website. Don't hesitate to contact me. I'd love to hear from you. Well, hey, the session before, we talked a lot about why stories work, how to craft stories, and how to use them in your business, right, to grow your business. And then this workshop is all about how to tell, deliver your stories, how to practice your stories. Because how do you get to be a good storyteller? By telling lots and lots and lots of stories, right? So this is not a workshop that has a PowerPoint presentation. This is a workshop where we do stuff, right? And so in the first workshop, I gave you a structure for how to craft a story. There are many structures, but this is a good one to get us going, right? You figure out your key message first, so you know the destination, where you're heading, right? And what you're going to say at the end. And then from there, you figure out, okay, where's the setting, right? What year was it? Where was I located? What was the environment I was in? What's the problem? Who are the characters? Right? What action steps did I take? How was that problem resolved? What were the results? Right? It got resolved. So then what happened? Right? What results did people experience? And then what's your key message? So that's the basic structure. You all crafted a story, right? And if you didn't make it to the first session, that's okay, because you're going to be able to tell a story just fine. I wanted to review that for just anybody who wasn't at the previous session. So today, right now, we're going to talk about how do you grow your stories. And what I want to do is make sure you walk away from our time together knowing how to do that, because I'm not going to be with you. And I want you equipped to know how to do it yourself. Before we get started, are there any questions? Thoughts, concerns? Just checking in. Okay. So the first thing I want you to do, you're going to work with a partner this entire time. So whoever you're sitting next to, I want you to turn to them and you'll work together. Now, your name is? Kathy. Kathy, maybe you need to work. Oh, nope. Yeah, yeah. Raise your hand if you need a partner. Okay, maybe Kathy and can work together. Who else needs a partner? Everybody got a partner? Cool beans. We're going to walk through an activity. I have my notes here because, as I said in the first session, I could talk for months about storytelling, and I want to make sure we stay on track. And I cover all the things that I want to share with you. There's a particular method that storytellers use to help craft their stories and also help them deliver their stories. And I call it the storytelling laboratory. Put the laboratory together, and you're all going to do it. Now, what the laboratory consists of, and I'll share with you what it is first, and then I'm going to give you the postcard, which is how to do it, and then I'm going to turn you loose. And then we're going to talk about it afterwards. Okay? Now, what the Story Lab is you work with a partner. The best way to grow a story is to have a really good listening partner. Because have you ever had the experience of talking with somebody and they're listening really well to you, and all of a sudden something brilliant pops out of your mouth and you go, where'd that come from? Right? So we've had those experiences when we've been listened to really well. So that's what we want to do. We want to have that brilliance kind of pop through right now. So how do you do that? Well, you're going to work with your partner, and each of you is going to tell a story. But one person is going to tell a story, and we're going to work through the story lab, and then you're going to switch, and the next person goes through, tells their story. We're going to go through the story lab, and then they'll be done. Then we'll see where we are, how much time is left, if we can get 2 rounds in, woohoo, okay? And I give you these cards so you can take them home. And you can pick other listening partners and do the same process with them and train them in how to do this. Because it ultimately benefits you. If you can find a good listening partner and you always know, oh, I can go to this person, they can help me really think better about this story, help me deliver that story, help me craft that story, then that's a great thing. I mean, sometimes when we are working on our stories, we'll write it down, and 3 months later, we still haven't finished the story. But you want to be able to tell your stories in person, right, when you're with a client. So let's just go right to how to do it with another person instead of spending the time writing. Fair enough? Okay. So here's the laboratory. Someone goes first. It doesn't matter, you're both going to do the same thing, right? Just pick who goes first. One person is going to be the teller. The other person is going to be the listener. Now the listener has a really, really important job. And your job as a listener is to listen the best story possible out of someone. Well, how do you do that? It's really easy. You just get to kick back and listen delightedly. Here's how we usually listen. We listen intently because we're trying to figure out what we're going to say next, the piece of advice we're going to give, right? The thought we want to share with them, or the story that we want to tell in return. So what's going on? It's all like an inner monologue, right? And no real listening is going on. It's all about us, right? And not about the other person. So what you get to do is put all of that on hold, right? And really be in total service to that storyteller. And the best way to do that is just kick back, listen delightedly, go, woo, yeah, great. Right? And you let them finish before you say one thing. Because you know what our worst habit is? Butting in, interrupting, right? And why? Because there's a piece of information that we want to know, forget the other person. We're not really interested in their story. We want to know a piece of information like, whoa, yeah, what year was that? Right? Or wait, before you go on, what's that person's name? Right? Oh, yeah, I had a similar experience, right? And before you know, we're off telling our story and leave the other person in the dust. Right? Okay, so we don't need to do any of that. We just kick back, listen delightedly, really put our agenda, anything that's going on in our brain on hold. And you know, it's a lot of fun to do that. So when they're done, and I'm going to time things out for you, right? So I've got a timer, I've got a bell, I'll give you a little signal, you know, a minute left, 30 seconds left, so you've got some, you know, markers here. And then the person ends the story, and then the listener has another really important job. Now, all of this is on the card, right? So you'll all have these instructions. So the listener's job when the story ends is really, really important. Because what you're going to do is you're going to ask a few questions of the teller. These questions are on the card. Now, there are two kinds of questions in the world. There are information questions. What year did that happen in? What was that person's name? Right? Those are information questions. Those questions, they satisfy something in our brain, right? It's our agenda. We want to know something. It's our agenda. But we are still, as listeners, in total service to the storyteller. So we want to ask different kinds of questions. We want to ask reflective questions that help us all think better about the story. So you're going to ask questions, and you get to pick and choose which ones you want to ask. Oh, what did you like about that story? What did that story mean to you? What do you think you learned from that experience? Right? There are, well, a bunch of them on here. And you get to pick and choose the one that speaks to you, right? Because different partners, if we switch, depending on the story, you might ask different kinds of questions, but still from this list. Now, I'm going to ask you to make sure, ask the questions from the list, because I find many people aren't used to asking these questions, and so they think they can make up other questions, and it doesn't work. So just give yourself like the complete experience, and just, you know, follow the card, and you'll be fine. So I'll give you a few minutes to ask those reflective questions, and you get to listen delightedly again, right? And oh, by the way, you're not taking any notes. And then when that piece is done, so that's the second piece. The first piece was listening to the story. Second piece, asking those reflective questions. And then comes the third piece. And this is even more fun. And all you get to do is offer appreciations for what you heard. I loved it when you said this. When you got to this part of the story, I really felt it. I loved the way your voice changed when you told this part of the story. You get to appreciate as much as you can possibly think of. And yeah, sometimes we run dry. We go, I don't know what else I could appreciate, so there are a few things. Right? to, you know, kind of trigger your brain. Oh yeah, I could say that, right? And then when that's done, you get to thank your partner, and then you get to switch. And the other person gets to go through the same experience. And then we'll talk about what happened, what you experienced, and we'll talk more about how to use this. So does that make sense to everybody? Okay. So I'm going to distribute these cards. And I think we've got enough for every person. Yeah. So why don't you pass these down? Everybody take a card. Now, if you're a partner, you have to sit and face your partner. Because is this really good listening? I'm going to tell you. I'm going to tell you the story to tell. I'm going to tell you the story to tell, so don't worry about it.
We're trying to turn the lights on because the windows are causing a glare. It's hard to see the face of the person that we're facing.
Oh. Okay, we'll get the moderator to do that.
Okay.
Okay. Anybody need a card? Yeah, you need a card. There you go. And behind you then, here.
So one each?
Yeah, one each. Okay, we're trying to get the lights turned on, so that'll happen in a minute. Okay. So turn your chairs and face your partner, because this is not good listening. Right? And it might get a little noisy in here, so you might find yourself moving a little closer to your partner. Now, what story are you going to tell? Inquiring minds want to know. All right, so let's start with the story of how you got started in your business. This is your origin story. So we tell this story so that people kind of, well, as I said in the previous workshop, this is what makes you unique in the marketplace. This is what distinguishes you from every other senior moving company in the world, because it's your story, and you're the only person who can tell it. It's an insight you had, an aha you had. It's like, damn, I'm going to go do this, right? And this is why. And this is what I bring to the table. And now think a minute before we get started. What's that final thought you want to leave somebody with? And how are you going to end the story? What's the point of that story? And we know the point is, and so that's what happened. No. But the point is in what it means. What does it mean to you, right? You're doing this work. What does it mean to you? What did you learn? What's your takeaway from your experiences, right? Something like that. So, are you ready? Pick who's going to go first. All right, hold on. We got a question. Yes?
Yes, right. Story, but I didn't know if we had a time.
Oh, yeah, I'm going to give you the timing for it. All right, before you get started, all right, don't get started yet. So I just want to make sure you know who's going to go first. So decide that. And then I'm going to give you 3 minutes to tell this story. And I'll give you the 1-minute sign, the 30-second sign, and then the chime will go off. Right? And you'll wrap it up. And then I'll tell you to move to the next activity that's on your card, and then we'll time that. And then I'll tell you to go to the third part. We'll time that. Right? So we've got a process here. Is everybody clear? All right. So you've got 3 minutes. Tell me about how you got started in this business. Right? Go ahead and begin. All right. Now it's time to go on to the second part. which is asking a few of those reflective questions. Now, ladies, Betsy and Stanlin, can Migdalia join you and kind of observe what's happening? Great, okay, thanks. So you can either move closer or whatever. All right, so now we're going to go to those reflective questions. I'm going to give you 2 minutes. You get to pick and choose which one of those three. You can probably ask 1, 2, depends on how fast things go. But you should be able to ask at least 2 questions, maybe a third. Pick and choose which one you want to ask. And then you've got 2 minutes. Go ahead and begin. And then bring that to a close. All right. Now, the listener gets to offer as many appreciations as they can cram into 2 minutes. All right? So you've got 2 minutes. Go ahead and begin. All right. Thank your partner. All right. And now we're going to switch. Yes. Yes, got a question here.
I think we might know the answer.
Right.
But she found that she wanted to appreciate the story before she asked the question.
Oh, yeah. You know, the order is because, and I've done it the other way too, right? But in this story lab, we want to go through these particular steps in these particular orders so you get a particular kind of experience. But to ask those reflective questions first is really important because sometimes the teller hasn't figured out some things yet about the story. Like sometimes the key message. All of a sudden when you ask those reflective questions, oh, more pops through. And the clarity happens, and then you have more to appreciate it. And then if you do the appreciations first, everybody's right? And then you ask the reflective questions, and then you don't have the opportunity to offer appreciations I want you heard, right? Unless you take the opportunity again.
And that's what we thought when we talked it out.
Oh, see? Brilliant. Brilliant. All right. So let's switch, and then we'll talk about the experience afterwards. So now the new person becomes the teller. Tell us what got you into this business, your experience, right? Tell us about how you got here. And you've got 3 minutes. Of course, the listener, what are they doing? Kicking back delightedly, just hanging out there, having a good time, right? 3 minutes, go ahead and begin. And go ahead and complete that thought. And then bring that to a close. There we go. All right. So now you've got, we're going to go to the second part, asking those reflective questions. The listener gets to ask those questions of the teller. So pick and choose which questions you want to ask. We've got 2 minutes. Go ahead and begin. All right, great. So now we go to the last part, the third part, which is offering appreciations. You've got 2 minutes to give as many appreciations as you cram in, can cram in there. And so go ahead and begin. All right, thank your partner. Okay, great. Let's talk about your experiences here. So what was your experience like with your partner? Oh, amazing. Oh, like how? What happened?
What she told me that she appreciated being about my story, that she got that out of what I said to her, was pretty mind-blowing.
That's,
It's kind of like tearing up a little bit. How did she get that?
yeah, and how does that make you feel?
Like amazing, like that I was able to, well, either she's really intuitive and got it for it, that I was able to express myself so that she could, or together, we know each other's stories.
You know, I love this. You're pointing to something that happens to us all the time. When we think about our stories, sometimes say, oh, that's, you know, Or I don't really have a really important story to tell. Or I could tell that story, but it really doesn't. You know, we discount our stories all the time. Just like when we go and find a beautiful piece of clothing at the thrift store and somebody compliments us on it, and we go, that old thing. We treat our stories the same way. So when you have the experience of sharing a story and somebody reflects back to you what it meant to them, how it affected them, all of a sudden, oh, wow, my story is important. My story can affect people. My story can make a difference. My story has work to do in the world. And if I tell it, it can do that work. Make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Thank you for saying that.
It like strengthens, like if you're doing with a client, it's like it creates the bond.
Hallelujah! Workshop over! Right? Yes.
I appreciated your both instruction and permission to just receive as the listener.
Isn't it great? How often do we allow ourselves to do that? No, because we're just so busy thinking how we're going to respond to things. Right? So what's the power of just stopping and listening in this way? Tell me, what is the power in that? What happens?
You really leave room for more things to emerge.
You leave more room for more to emerge. What else happens when you just kick back?
You connect and you bond.
Right,
Emotional connection.
right. How many people knew their partner before they sat down? How do you feel? Okay, you did. I'll get to you in a minute. You guys over here, how do you feel about your partner now?
I feel like I know. I really do.
3 minutes, 2 minutes, 2 minutes.
And I wouldn't be afraid to approach him in a room, even though I've never met Richard before. He's now approachable. And
Yes.
he's now a human being, not just a face in a crowd.
Yes.
He's a real person to me.
Yahoo. Absolutely. Here and then here.
I know before I've heard that phrase, did you hear me or did you listen to me? And I felt like I really knew, now I understand the difference because people talk, sometimes you hear them, but I felt like listening to your instruction, I actually listened to. I didn't hear, I listened.
Oh, thank you. Sorry. That, I just want to touch my heart because that just is so meaningful. Here and then here.
We have such, we've never met one another, never seen one another, and have such similar stories and such similar life experiences that made our journey possible for the both of us, that it was just transcending. I mean, it just, we're like, you're telling my story, get out of my head, you know? Very weird.
I love it. Here.
On video for you.
I love it. Here and then here. Okay, hold on. Okay, so here for.
So my sister Linda's at the conference, and she has the same business in Florida. I'm in
Uh-huh.
Tennessee, and she told me when she meets with a client, and I'm going to learn, you just taught me what to do with a client.
Yes.
She likes to go in and says to the client, tell me your story. Before she says anything about the company, she asks the client to tell her their story so she kind of knows where to come in later, and it gives them a chance to, it's like the client knows she cares,
Yes.
they get to talk.
Yes.
She gets to pick their brain later because
Yeah.
she heard what their stories. So I love this.
Yes, absolutely. Perfect, Diane. And then you. What's your name?
James,
James. Okay.
I don't think you should call this a course on storytelling. I think it should be called a course on how to listen.
Yes. Yes. Thank you. Thank you. Oh, yeah. He said he didn't think that I should call this a course on storytelling. I should call it a course on listening. Yeah. You here knew each other, and you did this activity. So what was the experience like for you? Also filled in a lot of holes for you?
Her story, like touched my heart.
Wow, so a deeper connection because of that, touching that heart that went on. I use this activity with, executive teams, mostly guys who've worked together for a bunch of years, and afterwards they'll go, I didn't know that about you. Right? So do you feel you learned something new about the person? Right. I do this at conferences sometimes with several hundred people, and we're all sitting in those auditorium chairs, so we kind of try to scoot around and face each other as best we can. And I can't tell you how many times people have come up to me afterwards and said, Karen, I can't wait to introduce you to my new best friend. Never knew him before. Sitting down with a new best friend. Or Karen, I want to introduce you to my long-lost brother I never knew I had. 3 minutes, 2 minutes, 2 minutes, and look what happens. I mean, I think it's pretty astounding. Then sometimes I have someone come up to me and say, after this activity, I don't really think I've ever really been listened to my entire life. And when that happens, I don't know whether to go, yay, or whether to cry, right? Because it is both marvelous that that awareness is there and such a tragedy that it's happened. What was it like just kicking back and listening delightedly? What was that like?
Refreshing.
It was refreshing, delightful.
It was hard for me.
It was hard, see? All right, now we get to the real skinny on this, right? Yeah.
I was worried for a second. I'm like, wait a minute, that was difficult.
What's that? Intimate. You get intimate really fast, don't you? Yeah.
I think it was hard not to ask a question. Like I was like, I wanted to ask a question, I didn't want to wait to the end.
Oh yeah, see, we've so trained ourselves in interrupting, right? And so not being able to interrupt is sometimes, oh wait, I didn't realize how much I interrupt people when I talk, right? It's kind of a self-awareness thing, right? What else was hard about it?
As a move manager, it was interesting to just focus on one thing and not have to do 3 things while you're just doing one. Multiple things at a time.
Oh yeah, so we're so used to doing multitasking, having 5 things running through our head at the same time that we have to keep track of. And then we're listening to somebody on top of that. That's another 6th thing we've got to keep track of. And so we're not used to just putting all of that aside, and that can feel hard, right? Yes?
I think that it was easier because it was a stranger to just sit and listen.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm always in trouble for interrupting my husband, and sometimes I feel like if I don't interrupt him, I'm just going to have to sit there and go, yes, yes, yes. And my family, I'm one of 7 kids, like if we don't all
Well,
jump in, we're not going to be heard. So
right.
it was easier for me, even though I wanted to ask questions.
Uh-huh.
I wonder how I could bring this into my personal life.
Well, yeah, I mean, there's great value in doing that, and you'll find those moments when you can. It might not be, all the time that you're communicating with your family, but I have my graduate students, my MBA students, do this activity, and we're all online, right? And they have to do it outside of our online class, and I say, you must follow these directions exactly. And if you stray, I will know it, because I can read your assignment, and I'll see that you did not do that. So don't bother, right? Just really follow the instructions, and then report back to me what happened. And they have to write us The prompt I have with my graduate students is, tell me something about your name. Which, by the way, use in networking events, right? You meet some marvelous people. Aaron, tell me something about your name.
I hated it until I was an adult.
But automatically what happens, she starts sharing the story about that. And then you get to ask, oh gosh, what did you, take away from that experience? And then you go, oh, I really like what you said. So, but here's what happens with my graduate students. They say it's darn uncomfortable. They didn't realize how much they interrupt. And I don't allow them to take notes. And that drives them absolutely bonkers. But they said they remembered everything about the story. They were able to write it up. It was a lot of fun for them. And they say, okay, I'm going to try this out with my husband or my wife next or my kids, right? And then they report back to me. So one of my clients, and she's also a student of mine in another kind of online class, and Tori, I gave her this assignment, gave all my students this assignment to try out back in the real world outside of the classroom. And Tori said, okay, she's a head of a national nonprofit. She goes, okay, I've got a lunch coming up with one of our donors. Every year he gives $50,000 to our organization, and I spend the lunch telling him about how his money, how we put that money to good use and the difference it made. She said, well, I think I'm going to try out Karen's listening activity. I'm going to try it out and see what happens. So that's what she did. She asked him a story, asked him for a story. Oh, tell me about what's going on here. And he shared that with her, and she did the whole listening, reflective questions, appreciations. At the end of the lunch, he handed her a check for $100,000, and she never asked for it. Because, to somebody's point here, he felt seen, heard, and valued as a human being. So imagine what this can do when you use it with your clients. Tell me what's going on here. Tell me what's happening in your life, right, that brings you to this point. And then ask a few reflective questions. Offer those appreciations, not solutions. Not time yet. Offer those appreciations. What do you think will happen? Gain their trust quicker. Will they feel seen, heard, and valued? Will you have a relationship now? Right. This is how we grow our stories. So this is an activity that has multiple dimensions and uses to it. So one use is, all right, I need a story. I need a good listening partner to listen the story out of me, to ask me those reflective questions, because that's where it's in the dialogue that all of a sudden we have those aha moments, right? And then the appreciation, so I know what I did right. So I can do it again. Right? So you can use it for growing your own stories and learning how to tell those stories in a way with get real-time feedback. You're watching the listener. You see what lights them up. You see what resonates with them. Do more of that, right? So, great way to tell your stories all at one time, right? Shortcut. but it's also a great process. So, to use networking events with prospects, with clients, with family members. I mean, take your pick, right? So, we're just about out of time. We could do this all day. I want to hear the next round of stories, you know? And switch you around to another partner and, you know, have some more magic happen. But I encourage you, go have a drink with somebody or over dinner tonight. Do this. It's fun. See what happens. So tell me some of the takeaways that you've got for our time together right now. Yes?
So the listening was a giveaway for me because I think we as a society, or at least me, felt that by interrupting and contributing to the conversation was showing my engagement.
Yeah.
And now I realize by not saying anything, the engagement is actually richer.
Yes.
Right.
Perfect. That's a great conclusion.
Exactly the same way. Exactly. Because
Yeah.
I always want to ask questions. And I think people think I'm interested, but
Yeah.
I agree, maybe if I don't.
And it's asking questions at the right time and asking the right kind of questions at the right time. So reflective questions first. Save those information questions later, all right? After the experience is done. Yes, another.
When you're doing storytelling as part of a presentation, which a lot of us have to do,
Uh-huh.
when is the story too long?
Yeah, so in presentations I can tell 10-minute stories depending on what I'm trying to do. And there are times when I tell a 3-minute story. Right? So it really depends on your intention, what you're trying to accomplish, and anybody can listen to a 10-minute story. No problem. Yes?
I think we all want, we're in this business because we want to help people.
Yeah.
The first thing we want to do is throw up all over them about our businesses, what we can
Yes.
do, and how we can help them. So I like that approach of asking them their story first, and then telling the story about our business in a way instead of just throwing out about our business.
Right, because then you can match your story to their story, right? That's much more powerful than here, let me regurgitate everything I want to tell you about my business. When I work with leaders, my point is that you are more influential. You have more impact when you listen. It's not about telling.
It was the power of being intentional.
Yes.
On both sides, quite honestly. And we live in a world where we just bounce from thing to thing to thing, and you don't have to be intentional.
That's
you can
right.
just sort of just navigate your way through. But when you stop and you're intentional on either side, it gets magnified by multiples. It's just very interesting.
I know, and you can do more. You can do this at any time and have this experience, right? I tell you, it makes hanging out with people a lot more fun.
So my question then behind that is, so how do when you ask someone else their story, how do you, like, they don't, like, you can't tell them so there's that side of it.
Right. I find that when I'm really listening well, listening appreciatively, listening delightedly, that, yeah, sure, there are times when the story goes on, right? And I just have to be there with them. But I also find that more often than not, because I'm listening really well, they get to the end of the story a lot faster than they're even expecting, right? And so both experiences are going to happen. Both are valuable. And so just hang out with it and just know, right, that things are, you're still going to get great benefit out of it.
To her point, I promise you that if you spend time with a client, if they've taken up all your time and you didn't get to really give them your sales pitch and all that, that you have connected with them and they will call you back at some point. They will have felt a connection to you, and you will not have wasted your time.
Mm-hmm.
You'll see.
Now, technically, the workshop is done, but we're having a good discussion. I'm willing to hang out here for as long as you want to talk and chat. And you want to say, is that okay? Okay, good. Yeah, you will get evaluations. Fill out your evaluations. We need them. Anybody who needs to go ahead. Feel free to get up and leave. It's not going to disturb us. But yes.
Just a quick question, because I missed the very beginning of the first session.
Yes.
What is the statistic about salespeople and telling stories and their success?
Oh, right. So the statistic was 13% of salespeople are selling 80% of the business. And so 13% of salespeople are selling 87% of the business. So you have a lot of salespeople out there, only 13% are selling the business, you're making the sale. So what are they doing? What's that 13% doing? They are making a human emotional connection. No matter what sales process it is, right? You can get trained by all these different ways, right? No matter what it is, it's the human emotional connection that they are making. And so how do you do that? Through stories and story sharing, just like what we did here, right? So. No, we talked about the 7 signature stories that every company needs to tell about itself, and then we crafted our first story. But you'll have the recording to download, and you've got the PowerPoint already, I think, available to you. Yeah. Mm-hmm. We didn't do the card at all in the first session. Right. If you have any other questions, comments, come talk to me.